Welcome to the Father Focus podcast.
Father Focus.
Check.
Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter?
So shaping your kids into powerful people.
Bro, let that brother fly.
Check.
All right, let's
You
go.
ready?
All right, let's go. I'm with myself.
Welcome to the Father Focus podcast. My name is Jermaine Stewart. I'm here with my two co-hosts, Nathan Arsenault and Jeremy Quintini.
What's up, boys?
What's up, fellas?
Yo.
We are excited to be with you guys. We're in the studio here at Hi Hello Lab. Shout out to the team here. They are great at what they do. So grateful for them. We have a guest today, a good friend of mine, Trey Battle.
Trey Battle.
What's up, Trey?
Welcome.
What's going on, guys?
How you doing,
What's
man?
going on? Man, I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Trying to wrap it up or chop it up with you guys.
Okay,
Seems like it's going to be a good time.
Yeah,
We're going to have fun.
Yeah, how's the weather in Atlanta right now?
It's actually pretty good. I mean, Georgia weather, Atlanta weather is schizophrenic. So it was about 80 something,
Like
maybe
Louisiana.
on Saturday, and then Sunday it dropped down to like 60. Monday it got to, I don't know, maybe 70s, but right now it's cool. It's good weather right now.
Yeah, I'm from New Orleans. I live in Baton Rouge, and that's how our weather is. And also, we do not like the Falcons because I'm a Saints fan. No offense to anyone who Chris
Yes,
Frith.
it is. It is
Yeah,
an offense. We hope you're offended, actually. Yeah.
When I moved to Baton Rouge, they have a player who played for the Falcons for about like 13 years, and he. I'm like, why does everybody like this guy? Like, we're Saints fans. Like, we should kick him out of the community.
Kick the man out. Yeah. So Trey, let's Trey's a friend of mine. Trey, how long did we meet ago? How many years ago was it? It was
Well, was that 2020? 2021?
like that.
Maybe?
Yeah. Met Trey 2021. You were serving at a church, right? Victory?
Yeah, I was on staff at Victory.
Victory in Atlanta.
They commissioned me to be your chauffeur.
That's right.
Come on.
Pick me up, man. First time. Pick me up. He had it all, like little snacks in the back, this fancy water,
Hey.
man. I was like, okay, let's go.
Dang, I didn't
Well,
do
you
that
got to
for
take
you.
care of your elders.
That's
He
right, you
knows-
gotta
he
do
knows-
that.
He knows what the Bible tells us to do.
That's right. Honor.
Oh, you 48 now?
44.
What are you
Keep it-
talking
keep
about?
it-
He's
keep it-
56.
Keep it right. See what I'm saying? With friends like this, who needs enemies, guys?
But
That's
seriously,
No, I was taking care of him like he was about 74 though.
I
come on,
appreciate
all
that,
I
man.
appreciate
He's
the extra
fragile.
love.
Yeah,
Extra
he is.
love. No.
and
So,
slow,
that's so
as
funny.
we know.
All the trash. Bring me all the smoke. It's all right. So yeah, no, I met Trey 2020, somewhere around there. I was just very much impressed by him, and we connected and became pretty good friends, and we've kept in touch since then pretty regularly. And as I was hearing Trey's story, man, I thought, man, this guy, this guy has lived more life in he's younger than me, lifetime than most people live their entire lifetime. And as I was hearing his story, I was like, it was totally a God connection that we met. And I was drawn into his story. I'm like, Trey, and we'll get into that. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Remember that? I'm like, bro, what are you doing? I heard his story. I'm like, bro, you need to write a book. And I literally started prophesying over Trey, and we'll get into that, like kind of how that has come full circle. But Trey, tell us a little bit about yourself. So you're from Atlanta. Tell us a little bit about you play. I think you played ball in this little thing called the NFL. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm from Georgia. I'm not from Atlanta. I'm a country boy.
Okay.
Those Atlanta boys, we call them city slickers.
Okay.
They are.
I'm from a exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm from a little town called Forsyth, and ended up going to the University of Georgia, playing football there, and went on afterwards to play in the NFL.
You're
for a few
safety, right?
teams.
You were a safety, is
what's
that right?
that?
You were a safety?
Yeah, I play safety.
Okay. So you were hard-hitting, aggressive lion? Not like
Absolutely. I had to be. I was usually the smallest guy on the field. So, when they say play with reckless abandon, that was me. I would just throw my body in with no regard for what happened.
Yeah. So you always played safety coming up in high school, college?
Well, I mean, in small schools, you learn how to be a two-way athlete, man. So you
Right.
play offense and defense. You just never come off the field. And if you're from a small school and you didn't play both ways,
Yeah.
then you probably weren't that good.
Right.
I came from a small school and didn't play at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So Trey, so
That's
you,
why your career ended early. So
No,
that's
right.
why.
no, that was because of my
Boom
my
roasted.
ankle.
Boom roasted.
Boom roasted.
Yeah.
So you're playing ball. So did you know you wanted to play at the college and NFL level? Well, I mean, what did you know that right off the bat, or what?
Man, I knew that I wanted to be a professional athlete from the time I was about 7 years old. I think the first sport that I played was football. I have all sisters though, so I was the only football
Okay.
player in the house. I have 4 sisters, and I remember the
Nice.
first pair of cleats my mom bought me. It was a pair of Nikes, and I was like, wow, I'm wearing Nikes. I'm playing
Yeah,
ball,
that's cool.
and so. And so what I did was I got a Sharpie and I started practicing my autograph on that shoebox when I was
Oh, that's
7 years
awesome.
old.
Wow.
And what I came up with that day in my room at 7 years old is still the way I sign my autograph now. Like my name stays the same. The only thing that changes is my number. So I knew since I was 7 I wanted to be pro.
Wow. And so you're in high school. What was your major in Georgia?
My initial major was chemistry. So
Oh,
I was a chemistry major. Honestly, so I was a walk-on. I didn't get a scholarship, and I thought, all right, if this doesn't work out, which I knew that it was going to work out, I just believed it was going to work out. But if it didn't work out, I was going to be a doctor. So I was a chemistry major up until my junior year. That's when I became a starter. I was on these, preseason watch lists, things like that. And I remember my fall semester, my my course, like my schedule was organic chemistry 2. It was like physics 3.
oh
It
man.
was
Dang.
some like 3,000 level psychology course. And I was sitting down with my coach and my counselor, and we're looking at each other and we're thinking, nah, this is not gonna happen.
We got to make it a
So
little
my
easier.
junior year, I changed my
Golly.
major to human development.
Yeah, that's a pretty stout course section there. Like my goodness.
So you're going this you go
Indeed.
yeah you go to Georgia. You walk on there. What was that process like? I mean, you're a walk on. Were you well received? Was it kind of harder on you?
Man, it was crazy because in high school, like I thought that I was good enough. I had, all state, all these things. I was getting all these letters in the mail. That's when you got recruited by the mail. Now these kids have huddle and they have highlight films and they have
Right.
music to it. I didn't have any of that.
Right.
To this day, I couldn't even give you a highlight tape because it just didn't exist. It's on the VHS somewhere, probably on the beta tape. I just don't have it. And so I have all these letters and I'm thinking that I'm going to get signed. I'm going to get a scholarship. And this one occasion, I called my recruiting coach at the University of Georgia. It was Coach Johnson. I remember he was the tight ends coach, but he was recruiting my area. And so when you're being recruited, you can go on these unofficial visits, and on these unofficial visits, they give you 4 tickets. And so I'm the man in high school because I would get hey Trey, Georgia's playing Auburn this week. You think we can go? Like, say less. Let me make a phone call. Let me hit the plug. I got you. Right? I was the man. And so I call him and I say, Coach, I want to come to this game next week. And he was like, oh, I'm glad you called. In my mind, I'm thinking he's never said this before. Like, why are you glad that I'm calling? I'm calling to ask you for something. And I was like, sure. What's going on? Why do you want to talk, Coach? And he says, I just want to let you know that we're not going to be giving you a scholarship because we feel like there are some athletes in your class who are more attractive size-wise. And I'm thinking, yeah, this guy, he just broke up with me.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it was just wild. So I'm sitting here listening to this, from thinking I'm the man, I'm going to get these tickets for me and my boys to go to the game to, yeah, you're not really big enough or good enough to play at Georgia, but I'll still give you these tickets, but I just want you to know where we stand. And I'm thinking, all right, well, let me get the tickets. I won't say anything about it. And what really materialized from that was I felt embarrassed.
Sure.
I felt like my self-worth was just diminished. It was in the dumps. I felt like everything that I believed myself to be was a complete lie. Like, you're not big enough, you're not fast enough, you're not strong enough, you're not good enough, you're not worthy. Those were the things that was resonating in my 17-year-old mind. And I made a declaration in that moment that I was going to prove to the world that I was a football player. And my entire identity revolved around me proving to the world that I was going to be a football player. So nothing else mattered at this point, that I was a son, that I was a brother, that I was a Christian. Like none of that mattered. I had to prove that I was a football player. And man, that's where my mental health took a real turn. So that was a wild experience. So I ended up walking on at the University of Georgia. I forewent my senior trip. So I graduated like the first week of May, and then about a week and a half later, I made a decision to go to Athens, where the University of Georgia is. I had a former teammate who was already on the team, and I called him. I said, "Hey, I need you to show me the ropes. I'm coming up here early.
Right.
All these guys who they say they're better than me, like, I'm going to come and prove. I'm going to get here before they do, because we didn't have all that early enrollment, all that stuff when I went to college. You started in like that next fall,
Right.
and so I started in the summer. I went there. I wanted to outwork everyone, but I wasn't enrolled. So I wasn't in classes, so I couldn't stay in the dorm, so I didn't have a place to live. And so I ended up being an all SEC player, all American player at the University of Georgia. But my first 3 weeks in Athens was me living out of my car. I was homeless.
Wow.
I was a homeless walk-on, starving to prove my point.
Wow.
And so that's how much that's how much it meant to me. That's how much it meant to my identity of being a football player. And I sacrificed everything. I packed up my clothes and my toothbrush, because that's all you own as a kid.
Wow.
And as the kids say these days, I got it from the mud. You know?
Yeah. So you play at Georgia, you graduate, right? And then so you entered a draft. You're drafted by who? What was the first team who you drafted by?
Yeah, so it's crazy. I wasn't even drafted. I went as an undrafted free agent.
Oh,
and
really?
so everything that I had to
Man.
go through in college, I had to repeat that cycle. It's like rinse and repeat. So I earned my respect. I earned playing time. I earned being a starter. I earned, these plaques that I have. You can't even see. I earned all of these accolades. But then the time to go to the NFL comes around, and it's the same thing. You're not big enough. You're not fast enough. You're not strong enough. I'm leading the SEC and like my team in tackles and interceptions, and I have all these awards, but I'm still not enough.
Right.
And that's when like it just compounded on. I have to double down on proving to the world now that I'm a football player. And so I went out to California. It was the San Diego Chargers. You know how most players have these draft parties. So I kind of knew of my grade. I was going to be a day 2 guy, and it was going to be later in the draft. I didn't foresee that I was going to go undrafted, but the last couple of picks of the draft came. I got a phone call. I think it was may have been Tennessee, saying, "Hey, we were thinking about drafting you." Phone call never came. Mr. Irrelevant comes. And I think during the last pick, I get a phone call from Bill Bradley. He was my DB coach in San Diego when they were still in San Diego for the Chargers. And he was like, "How do you feel about being a Charger?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready." And this was a time before like Google Maps and stuff. If you guys remember MapQuest.
That's right. That's right.
MapQuest.
And you got to print it
You
too.
remember MapQuest. Exactly. You had to print it. Exactly. So I had no idea where San Diego was. Like,
Right.
I had never been anywhere that we didn't play in the SEC. And so I asked my sister, because we were at my sister's house, and I asked her for her computer, and I pull up San Diego. I was like, wow, that's on the other side of the world.
That's as far from you.
So,
yeah.
It was so far from Georgia. And I'm thinking, all right, let's do this. And so I had family in California, and I had flown out early just to get acclimated, because I realized it was like 3 hours behind. So any advantage that I can think of to put me in front of all the guys who were drafted, I did it. I went to rookie camp, and people are going to see this. So I did something that you're not supposed to do. I got the playbook, and during rookie camp, and like day 3, I took it to FedEx Kinko's. I was like, "Hey, make a copy of this. Don't say a word." And so I copied the playbook, because you have to leave it there after rookie camp. So when all the rookies left their books there, like I went back to my cousin's place in California, And I studied the playbook, just study. So the time everyone came together as a
Dude,
team, like
you had
I
the
was
edge.
months ahead of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was ready to go. And so I ended up playing about 6 years of professional ball. That was, well, about 5 years. So my rookie year was 2007. I ended up retiring in 2012. So yeah, that's my professional career.
Yeah. So
Cool.
you're playing ball,
Through the adversity.
I
Like
mean,
I think I think that's very interesting. And everyone has adversity in life. Yours, I think you said you were undersized. Like, could you just, like, for people who are listening and who are not, and even me, like, what's a safety, quote, supposed to
Like a
weigh?
prototypical
Yeah, what's
safety.
prototypical safety? That's playing, like, and which versus your size. What would?
Gotcha. So when I was pretty much, I think I may have gained 10 pounds in college. So
Okay.
when I left high school, I was about 5'11". I really didn't get any taller. I was about 5'11", 160 pounds.
Okay.
I think when I left University of Georgia, I was about 5'11", 175 pounds.
Okay, man.
The guys who were getting drafted were about 6 foot to 6'2",
6'2". Mm-hmm.
190 to
Yeah,
I was gonna say
210.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 190 to 210. So
Yeah. So
I was a good 25 to 30 pounds
Yeah.
lighter than anyone else I was competing against.
Yeah, so without a doubt, I mean, obviously, I think it's interesting, and even for the course of your life, for the rest of your life, I think everybody likes the underdog, and in a certain sense, we all have our own narrative. It's not athletics for most people, but you have your own narrative to where you may be an underdog. We've been underdogs, but it's like you had to learn. Like, from, I think you said, maybe even from high school, I think you said, going into college, being an underdog there. At some point, middle school, you had to earn a spot. Probably were one of the better ones in middle school, high school, and then college. It's like, okay, can I do this? You're walking on with the chip on your shoulder, because they don't have the confidence in you that you have in you, and you're like, I'm gonna prove you wrong, and so you carry that with you, and I think that's a benefit that I think more men should have. Not in a braggadocio way, but like, hey,
Just be gritty.
to be gritty,
Yeah.
and to have, like, look, I'm going to put work in to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish. I think that's valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your story is very inspiring. I guess I'm curious. We just interviewed another NFL guy, and it's kind of fun talking about that perspective, because most people never see it. And we kind of asked him, like, who were the players in the NFL, even though you're at this elite athlete level, that even you as a high level athlete look at and be like,
Wow.
holy crap. Like, I don't even understand how this guy can do some of the things he does. So were there any players in the NFL when you were playing that you looked at and just, like, your jaw dropped when you watched some of the things that they did? He said, like, Barry Sanders. Some of those, but he was a different era.
Well, I think for me it was a different perspective, because when I got to that level, I had already, like I said, in high school, I had already made this declaration that now I was going to be a football player, and that was what my identity was wrapped around. And so for me, when I got to the NFL, every player, I didn't marvel at them, I didn't gawk at them. It was, I'm going to prove that I'm better than you. So
Yes.
everyone that I played against, everyone who was on my team, a teammate, it was, I have to prove that I'm good enough to beat you. And so I really didn't look up to players in that regard. However, when I was playing, especially towards the end of my career, that's when concussion, I guess,
starts coming out.
protocols and things became popular. And so I didn't really look up to those guys, but they were all people who I compared myself against, because I felt like, they're living the life that I want to live. And so I let comparison pretty much rule and ruin my life. And it took me into a state, because, this concussion era of football, where I was losing a lot of friends. I was losing a lot of teammates to suicide. And it was like, this is where my life takes a drastic turn, because from 17 to now, I'm about, I don't know, 26, a good decade of my life. Like, I see myself on this trajectory to just excel and succeed. and I'm comparing myself against all these other players. And then I see all these other players not here anymore, not alive. And then I have this reckoning of sorts to, all right, everyone who you were comparing yourself against, everyone who you strove to be are essentially killing themselves. So what does that mean for you? And I was getting close to retirement. So from an identity perspective, everything that I wanted to be for the past decade of my life, proving to the world
Closing.
that I was a football
Yeah.
player, that was about to be off the table. And the guys in which I was comparing myself against, that I wanted to compete against and wanted to prove that I was better than, like they were committing suicide. And so I'm at this crossroads of, you're no longer a football player. Everyone else is leaving. What is there left to live for?
Right.
And that's when my life took a drastic change, a drastic turn.
So how did you transition? You're talking about that transition and, reinventing yourself. Tell us a little bit about that story. You told me that. I know the story, but I want audience and my friends to hear your story, because this is a major part of what's going on now in your life.
Yeah, that transition out of football was a tough one, man. It was a real tough one. And for guys who are watching this, or people who are watching it who may have military former soldiers or whatever in their family, transitioning from having someone tell you when to wake up, what to wear, when to be there, when to eat, when to sleep, when and where to show up, transitioning from that to just having hours and days and weeks of time that if you don't have a plan for, it's just idle. I found myself being alone inside of my mind. And I've been to a lot of places in the world, a lot of third world countries, and a lot of quote unquote dangerous places. But I would say the places the most dangerous place that I've ever been in my life is alone with myself inside of my mind. Because the things that you think, the things that you start to, I guess, just dream about, the all of that stuff, it's no end, and you usually don't seek the light, right? And so when I was transitioning, and as I said, I'm dealing with these two different dynamics of no longer being a football player and losing a lot of friends. And I had three roommates in my life. Their names were Quentin Moses, Paul Oliver, and Demario Mentor. They all three drafted in the NFL. All three, All Americans coming out of high school. And what's crazy is during this time when I'm trying to navigate this, I lose two of them. So to this day, I only have one remaining roommate alive. And man, it took a toll on me. It took a toll on me mentally. And so I came to this conclusion that if who I am no longer exists, meaning I'm no longer a football player, and everyone that I wanted to be no longer exists, then the only logical conclusion that I could come up at that time in a truly mentally unhealthy state was for me to take my own life. And so what I did was I got the call that Paul had taken his life. I had come back to school to finish my degree because I left early to play. And so I had come back to Athens to finish my degree. I was taking classes, again, just gritty. I think that was the term that one of you guys used. So I was working at the hospital. Well, I was going to class from about 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. every day. And then I was working in the hospital from about 2 to 10:30 every day in the operating room at the local hospital, because I wanted to compete against all those people that I was going to apply to medical school against. And it was just physically and emotionally draining. I'm losing people. I'm getting ready to go to class. I get this phone call from another teammate, former teammate, said, "Hey, did you hear the news?" I'm like, "Dude, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't heard any news. I'm just trying to get out of the house." He says, "Paul took his life." I said, "What?" Yeah. So the night before, Paul had taken his life in front of his wife and two little boys. Shot himself in his home. And so I got the call as I'm coming down the stairs in my house. And then when I heard it, like when he told me that, I just collapsed on the stairs. And that's when I really made that decision that, I don't want to be here anymore. Like this is, I can't overcome this. This is something that I haven't planned for. There's no one that I'm competing against but myself, and I can't beat me right now. And so I get in the car, going through the motions like I'm going to go to class, and I take a detour, and I go to this bridge, and I'm thinking, all right, this is where it's going to happen because I just can't do this anymore. So I had driven across the bridge and backtracked, just trying to figure out where exactly I wanted to take my life. Like where's the best place for me to be successful in killing myself, right? And so I figured it out. You know, I'm a great planner and I know how to execute. I'll be successful at whatever I put my mind to.
He's
My
an
mind was to
executor.
this.
You
So
are
I
an
knew exactly
executor.
where I was going to do it. I knew exactly where I was going to do it. I knew exactly how I was going to execute it. And I put the car in park and I'm ready to do it. And I'm thinking, all right, what have I missed? What have I left out? I haven't left a note. How's my wife going to know? Like, how are my children going to know? You know, I'm married with four kids at this time.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And as I'm contemplating these things, the logistics of it, Holy Spirit just hits me. Call coach. It's like, what? I'm not even thinking about praying about this, but the Holy Spirit is so palatable at this moment. He said, call coach. I can hear him. And he was referring to Coach Rick. I knew it immediately. And Coach Rick was my college coach. All 4 years I was there. And at this time, I don't even know if Coach Rick has the same phone number. And I just pull out the phone and I call him. And as soon as I hit send, I'm just bawling. I'm weeping uncontrollably. I'm just weeping. And he answers the phone. Wow. I didn't expect for him to answer. And he just hears me sobbing. And he says, Trey, what's going on? And the only 2 words I got out of my mouth was, I'm scared. Because I was so scared.
Wow.
And he says, you know what? I don't care what's going on. I don't care what's happening. I just need you to get to me. Just get to me. He says, do you remember where I live? I say, yes.
Wow.
I crank the car back up and I drive to his house. I get there. He has the team chaplain, a couple of other teammates. And when he opens the door, I just fall into his arms. He embraces me and I'm just sitting there crying, just sobbing. And this is where God like really used him. In this moment, he starts affirming things that I neglected from the time I was 17 years old when that coach told me that I wasn't good enough to get a scholarship.
Wow.
He starts affirming all of these things that I may have known about myself, but I neglected and started really affirming to me how God saw me. How God sees me as, his son, as someone who doesn't have to prove himself,
Right.
as someone who doesn't have to compete for his love, someone who doesn't have to compete for his affection, for his time, for his acknowledgement. And he's saying these things to me, and man, I'm like, I want to be here. I want to live. I want to have life.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that moment completely changed my life.
Wow.
And after that, he paid for my therapy. I was seeing a counselor for maybe like 2 years, and it's just how I got to where I am today.
That's so interesting because there's so many guys out there, honestly, because guys are aggressive. They want the fight. They want to go in and win. They want victory, and they're looking for the challenge, right? And you've had that in your life of striving, and you at your
But
own,
succeeding too,
Yeah,
striving
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
succeeding, right?
Yeah,
Both.
striving and success, and yet coming to a place where it's like, all right, I'm transitioning into a new phase in life. Where do I find myself? I'm losing people that I love, that I care about, but then there's not a striving for the most important element in our life, which is the love of God. It's His work in us, and you embracing that. Man, tell us about what that was like. In that moment, he's coaching. Your coach is speaking that over you. Like, how did that like reshape your life from that pivotal point to now? Like, I don't have to wrestle for the Lord's love. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if I could I couldn't put these words on it in that moment, but in retrospect, I now know that at that point in my life, everything that I had learned and had, built this this callus over my heart, right? The way I would put it would be this phrase. I had gotten to a point to where I believed that I was too strong to ask for help and too prideful to admit that I was hurting.
Yep.
And in that moment is, I think, for the first time in over a decade that I understood what surrender meant. I truly understood what surrender was, because I didn't have it in me to quit. I didn't have it in me to not say that I was in control. And in that moment, I think I had to be at my absolute worst for him to prove to me that everything that I had achieved was because he allowed it. And I was never in control of any of it. And who I was in all of those years of striving, trying to have success, was so far away from what he created me to be. And so that's what, in retrospect, that's what I realized in that moment, that I'm a son before anything else. I am his son. And in being his son, he is here to, I guess, protect me and affirm me and grow me and lead me. And that is, those are things that I had taken off of him and said, I can control these things. But he was saying, no, son, these are the things you need to surrender to me. And this is why I need you to see it.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. I'm interested in your psyche during that time, because you probably know statistically, I know you work with men and want to see suicide eradicated. We all know 80% of suicides are attempted by men, right? Like staggeringly overwhelming statistics say men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women. For me, I see a correlation between self-reliance. Men don't want to open up. They don't want to talk to anyone. They suffer in silence. They suffer alone. But then also that self-talk that I think men, when they're unhealthy, have internally. Part of me would say it's the trap of the enemy. It's demonic. And then some of it's just what we say to ourselves as men. First, like maybe you could kind of analyze that season and say, well, here's a few factors that were going on internally for me that led me to this place to think suicide was the best solution for me. And then even maybe you can speak to people listening that have started going down that road. Here's some signs or symptoms that you're heading that direction, and maybe some steps to get out of it, some help. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And from I guess I'll answer it from the psychological perspective. So anytime you are dealing with or navigating emotions that you really don't, that you fully can't understand, that you fully can't comprehend, right? What the things that you're feeling that you're not equipped to articulate. The first sign is a change in like sleep and eating patterns, when like you're just restless. There are nights I recall, like I like building things, and when I was going through that season of my life, I recall days that I would work and go to school, but I would come home and go in my garage and just tinker and just work on wood. And it would be 2 or 3 day stints where I wasn't even sleeping, or it would be, days that I wasn't eating. And so those are telltale signs that something is off. When you're not sleeping, you're not eating, something isn't right. The second piece is, I believe that men, I think it's a piece that's learned, and it's a systemic like perpetuation of what manliness is. And they put this term on it, toxic masculinity, right? And so we get to these points to where we feel like as a man, we're supposed to be able to figure it out. We're supposed to man up, right?
Right.
We're supposed
Muscle
to be
through.
like Atlas and just carry the weight of the world. And then if you speak that, you know what, I am hurting and I don't have it figured out, you think it makes you less of a person. From a man perspective, what we're taught, especially in sports, what we're taught, and what I think we should realize. I was about to say what I think we should realize is speaking up about the things that are hurting us or harm or have the potential to harm us is 10. I can't even put a number on it. How exponentially more strong you have to be to share those things that are most vulnerable to you, than thinking you have the strength to just keep it in and bear it on your own.
Right.
Like keeping it in and wearing this mask like you got it all together is the weakest thing that you can do. Seeking help and seeking counsel and seeking other godly men who can help talk you through these things and help navigate it, that's the strongest thing that you can do as a man. And I think we have to put that perception like on his head, completely flip it and say, as a man, this is actually what strength means. This is how strength actually looks, because being strong is in community, right? And I think so often we choose the wrong type of community, or we just choose isolation, and that's how we get to those staggering statistics.
Wow, that's good.
So Trey, I know now you want to talk a little bit about your co-founder of the Mental Health Alliance, correct? It's something that you've started. It's a nonprofit. You want to talk a little bit about that. You're also an author. You're writing a book. I think you're getting your master's degree. I mean, you're not a sit still. He's a move it forward leader type personality. But talk to us a little bit about your journey now and what you're involved in.
Well, I will say that all those things you said, I'm still making progress and equipping myself and growing my skill set.
Yeah.
I think the difference now is, though, Jermaine, is that everything that I did before this encounter, I did from a place of my own strength.
Yes.
Everything that I'm doing now and every way in which I'm moving and developing and growing and reaching out to people is all by divine appointment. Meaning I spend time in the Word, I spend time in prayer, and he just highlights to me, all right, Trey, you're going to do this. And it's overwhelming sometimes. Overwhelming. Case in point, I go speak about mental health now. It's funny how you can go from choosing like stoicism and isolation and science and silence to almost killing yourself, to using all of these things to help others find, seek the light and find hope, right? Through Christ. And so when we met, I was working at Victory, and I never wanted to work at a church ever, because every pastor that I had ever talked to, it was, yeah, you get into ministry, you got to do it because you love it, because it ain't no money in it, right? And that's all I hear. That's all I hear. Like, every pastor I've ever talked to, that's all I've ever heard. And I'm a retired professional athlete. Like, I don't want to be broke. No, that's not what I want to do, right? And so I'm telling you, for about 4 to 5 years, I had about 5 to 6 different pastors from Victory just hit me up. I'm like, hey, let's go have coffee. Hey, let's go have lunch. Hey, let's go grab a smoothie. Like, let's just talk. Come sit down. And I had been recruited to come to Victory for about 4 to 5 years. And it was a resounding no. Resounding no. And the decision that I made to come to Victory was I was still working in healthcare, and someone called and was like, hey, I'm not even gonna offer you a job. I just want you to talk. I just want to talk to you. Just come hear me out. And I'm out of respect. I said, you know what? I'll come hear you. Yeah, sure, whatever. So I get there, and I learned in about 90 seconds that I'm being interviewed, because it's not like, hey, Trey, tell me about yourself. It was like, so if you were in a situation where this occurred, how would you handle it?
You got tricked.
I got tricked, right?
Yeah.
I got tricked. And at this time, I had left Chick-fil-A, and I had about 350 plus employees at Chick-fil-A, and I interviewed every single one of them. So I knew what an interview felt like.
Man.
And so my posture like straightened up, and I started answering interview questions. But anyway, after I left that interview, I went home and told my wife about the experience, and I'm thinking, babe, these guys just hosted me into an interview.
Blindsided.
Yeah, I got blindsided by this interview, and I think they want to offer me a job. The HR person, the lady who's over at Human Resource and Employee, we call it Employee Experience, she asked me why I applied, and I explained to her that I never even been to our website. I didn't apply to a job. And so she sent me the application after the interview, and I'm showing my wife, and I said, what do you think I should do? And she said, let's pray about it. And my exact prayer was, Lord, I want this to be about your heart and not about my desire for money. Not my desire for like finances. So if this is what you want me to do, make it plainly, overtly clear that this is what you want me to do. And the offer came back, and it was about, I think it was about within 10,000 of what I was making. And I showed my wife, and she said, we can make that work. And I started working at the church. And my first assignment as an employee of Victory Church was to chauffeur this guy around.
Oh,
but
man.
anyway.
Really? Okay. Full circle. And here we are.
But I know it, right? I know it. But I say all that to say, all these things that I'm working on have been pointed out to me through intentional prayer, saying, Lord, if this is what you would have me do, then show me. And he's woken me up out of dreams, like out of my sleep with visions and dreams for the book that you were talking about. He showed me. I had a conversation once with a professor at the University of Virginia. And he says, Trey, did you ever think about what it does to a child's psyche to be playing in an apartment complex on the basketball court, right? And it'd be a violent altercation that same night. And they come out the next day, after the crime scene is, cased or scoped out. And there's a chalk outline of a body who had just been killed. And they're playing basketball over that. Did you ever think about what that does to the psyche of a child? I'm thinking, no, I never did. So I get back home and I'm sleeping, and the Lord is just downloading. And I just, boom, I wake up and I grab a book and I just start jotting this stuff down because he wanted me to write a children's book series on adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, right? And how are we as adults helping children navigate these things? And so it was 5 topics that he gave me. It was neglect and abandonment, divorce, bullying, loss of a loved one, and sexual assault. Like, these are the 5 most common things that are happening to our children. And you think, wow, these are so extreme, but they're happening. And that's why the leading cause of suicide for children aged 10 to 14, the leading cause of death for youth aged 10 to 14 is suicide. Like, 10 to 10-year-old taking their life. Like, what can drive a 10-year-old? Think back to what you were doing as a 10-year-old. What happened in your life that made you want to take your life at that age, right? And so I'm writing this book, and I'm going around and I'm keynote speaking, and I realized that as I'm speaking, I'm usually speaking to 1 of 3 groups, and this is how he gave me this idea for the Mental Health Alliance. This is the logo right here. We call it the brain print. It's redefining your identity, right? And I'm thinking about these things. And when I'm speaking, I'm usually speaking either to students, I'm speaking to parents, or I'm speaking to, in the corporate setting. So around CEOs or teams or whatever. And I quickly realized that there's a lot of intra-communication between those 3 groups, but there's not a lot of inter-communication between those 3 groups. And so you look at a student, a child, a youth, their main objective in life, like for me as a 17-year-old, I was so easily influenced on what my identity was going to be. And so as a young person, their number one objective is to define their identity. Who is walking and living in this skin in which I'm wearing? And what are the influences that are telling or describing or defining that identity for our youth? It's peers, it's social media, right? It's all these things. And a lot of times they aren't from healthy sources. Right. Oh, and that brings in the parent. Like, the goal of a parent is to instill a belief system in their children. But it's hard to do that when a youth comes home and a parent asks, how was your day? And if any of you have teenagers, good, fine, all right, it was okay, I don't know,
it was mid.
Like, how do we get past these like short phrases of communication, right? And then from a parent, they're dealing with things that they experienced in childhood because it was taboo to talk about it when they were a child. And so they still have these unresolved issues, right? These unrequited things of trust that they're dealing with. And when their children come to them with these problems, if the children are actually vulnerable enough or bold enough to speak to their parents about it, like, a lot of times they're ill-equipped to have these conversations. And what we're finding is parents are dropping their children off at the emergency room and saying, hey, they're saying they want to do something harmful to themselves. Just fix it. Just fix it. And they're just dropping them off. But then you have the community leader, the third portion of it. Like, at what rate are we seeing burnout in people who are working in the nonprofit arena? People who are our teachers, the coaches, right? The people who are dealing with our youth, our children outside of the home. They're dropping like flies, underpaid, overstressed, losing their own families, right?
No support.
And so
Work.
overworked, right? Even pastors, right? Well, how often do we know as pastors that things are going on in our congregants' lives that they aren't even coming to talk to you about or asking you to pray and intercede for? And as a parent, they're thinking, you know what? This is my child. I got to figure it out. I'm too embarrassed to say I don't know what's going on, and I'm too prideful to ask for help. I'm just going to figure it out until they can't do it. And it's just a dire circumstance, right? And so the goal of the Mental Health Alliance is to break down these silos of communication. Like, we do life in circles, but what if we combine those circles in this triangle, in these three vertices? And each arm, each side of that triangle is a bidirectional conversation communication piece where students are talking to parents, and parents are talking to students, and parents are talking to community leaders, and community leaders are talking to their children, like to their students, or like the youth. Right. And we are instilling those beliefs, right? We are setting healthy boundaries, and we are affirming communal norms in these youth and in these families, so that we truly have what I like to call in CMHA, the Mental Health Alliance, is the village model. Like, we all grew up in a time to where our neighbors knew who we were and what we were doing. And I don't know about you guys, but if my neighbor caught me doing something wrong,
You told your parents.
she would beat me, and then
yeah.
wait till your mom got home, and then you get another one,
Double
right?
yeah.
So I joke all the time, like, I used to be light skinned, but they beat me. My neighborhood beat me this dark, right?
God.
Oh,
So-
Oh, my
and so
God.
that's what I do now. That's my passion work. That's my heart work. And I was doing it while I was in the church, and I was taking time off, just using vacation time to go out and do these things and host these talks and host these conferences and things. But the Lord told me about a year and a half ago that March 31st was going to be my last day at Victory. He said transition. He gave me this word, transition, March 31st. And at the time, it was a few weeks before March 31st. And I'm driving, and I look up and I say, God, you crazy. That's like weeks away. I'm not prepared to do anything in a couple of weeks. So March 31st rolls by, and nothing happens. I'm like, whew, dodge that bullet. And so I just continued to pray into it. And then he just confirmed, March 31st, you are leaving. And through a year long of prayer and battling with God, it's like, I can do both. I can do both. I promise, God. Just trust me. I can do both. He says, no, you're going to do what I'm asking you to do. And so this past Easter, March 31st, 2024, was my last day on staff at Victory Church. And now I am doing this nonprofit full time.
Awesome. One quick question. I know we're trying to wrap up. Can you speak to men for a second who are struggling, that are in the middle of a battle, they're fighting alone? I mean, I think it's so common. It's something we hear all the time. Guys that we know, men that we hear about, sometimes after the fact, but a lot of times guys will open up little windows and kind of hint at things, but they don't go into the story. What advice would you give them? They're on the fence. Maybe maybe they've thought about suicide. Like, what do they do?
The first thing I would say is I would encourage them to have a shift of paradigm. And when I speak to guys who are dealing with this, who are so opposed to opening up and talking, I say, all right, I'm a believer. You know I'm a believer. My standard is Jesus. Like, that's who I look to. Jesus could have saved this entire world on his own. Like, he didn't need us. Like, he created us. Like, the Trinity, like, we are all made in his image. But when he came to earth to do his work, he didn't choose to do it alone. He chose 12 to do this thing called life with. So who are we? Who is we as people? Who are we as men to believe that we're supposed to do this thing called life alone when even Jesus had partners?
That's good.
And so if you're a man, if you're a father, right, and you're dealing with things and you're struggling and you don't know what to say, how to navigate it, how to like excise these things from you so that you can just feel this sense of peace. If Jesus didn't do it alone, I challenge you to stop trying to do it alone. Whatever it is, find a safe place, find a trusted place. So to communicate these things and help you get to a point to where you're walking in a mentally, spiritual, and physical health that only comes from the Father with community.
That's good.
So that's it.
Yeah, Trey, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
You know, you're giving a lot of insight, men, that it's okay to struggle. If you're out there and you're struggling, it's okay to struggle. You know, you're not weak or less than because you're struggling. I like the way Trey said that. We're not made to struggle alone. You know, find a community, find a safe place. Trey, just before we close, where can they find you? Give us a little information. How can they find you online? What do you got going on?
Yeah, it's let me see right here. Yeah, there we go.
He's trying to flex.
TMHAA.org. Go flex on them. Yes. Yeah, you saw that. I'm working on that little baby tricep back there.
I see you, man. I see it. Yeah.
Jermaine's got a little baby one
Yeah.
too.
What was it found again? TMH? What is it again, Trey?
TMHAA.org.
Okay. TMAAA.org. Okay. Also, Battle Solutions, right? Is that going on as well? Your website?
Yeah, definitely. Battle Solutions. Battle Solutions is my website. That's my private business. TMHA, or the Mental Health Alliance America. That's why it's TMHAA is my nonprofit.
Yeah.
And those are just the two main channels of, you know, how I'm trying to make an impact. Just being obedient.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's great.
Good deal, man.
Yeah. Yeah, we applaud you, man.
Yeah, thank
Trey.
you.
Keep up the great work. Thanks for all you do.
Yeah, Trey, thanks for sharing your story, man, taking time to be with us. Thank you for what you're doing. Again, if you like this episode, feel free to like, share, subscribe. You know, thank you so much for being a part of our show today. We look forward to being with you guys again. Until next time, peace out.
Peace.